Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on tonight. We're excited to be here on tonight. Welcome in, welcome in, welcome in, welcome in. So, this is the month of June, and what we haven't done in a while, and we haven't done the Word in Conversation podcast. So, we're going to be doing that for the month of June. We're doing that for the whole month of June, the Word in Conversation podcast. On this podcast, we talk about the Word of God, and we kind of relate it to different things in life, different aspects, bring it down to a reality type of stance. And we get an understanding of the Word, and we get an understanding of our own life, our own challenges, our own victories, our triumphs, all of those different things. So that's what we're going to be doing on this month. So I hope that you would call someone, text somebody, tell somebody to come join us on tonight. All those who watched for what we do, the trivia night. Call all those who watch for the trivia night, tell them to come on in. This is a fun time to kind of just sit back and relax, kind of whatever you're doing, you don't have to stop what you're doing. We're going to be explaining things, but we're still going to be talking, we're going to be laughing, we're going to be going back and forth with the right reverend behind the camera. My father is also here, off to my right. So anything that you want to throw down into the chat, throw those things down into the chat. We're welcome to all those things, those comments. I am going to be asking you to be saying some things, to kind of comment and be there with me on today. Kind of throw some things down into the chat and say hello. What's going on? You can ask me how the day was. You can ask me all those type of things. Then you can also kind of respond to some of the questions that I'm going to have on tonight. So how many of you have in the chat? You see anybody looking at mine right now? I have not pulled it up on my phone. So I don't know how many that we have in the chat on tonight. Do we have anybody yet?
Nobody's chatting, but we have 6 people on YouTube and 2 on Facebook. Now I went to 4 on YouTube and 2 on Facebook. So I guess when you say I'll be calling them people.
Somebody said, oh, you're going to be calling my folks? I'm out of here. I don't listen. I can't do this. You're not going to call me out. I'm not here to deal with this on tonight. So before we start off, so this Word in Conversation podcast is hosted by myself, and we call him the Dude, John Moore. But we received news earlier today that John Moore and Patrice Moore, they lost their brother, right? Patrice lost her brother today, unexpected passing. And so we're praying for the Moors on today. So please lift up in your prayer time, we will just throw Patrice Moore, her family, John Moore, as they go into this challenging moment, this challenging time right now. Also, on the other side, we want to shout out to this podcast's great friend, Jacob Roy, and his wife, Mia Roy. They have welcomed their third child, a son, Justice Roy. I know, right? Put some hand claps, some hearts in the chat. If you would, they have welcomed their son. This is their first son, and so we are excited for them. They have sent us pictures. We have to make our way out there. He is adorable. He is so cute. The Roys make cute children, and so we all thank God. We thank God for Mia and for giving God. Thank God for giving her strength and being strengthened in that family and growing that family. We are grateful for that. So on tonight again, because of your more, because the Dude is not here with me, you have to chat with me. Everyone's gonna have to conversate with me on the podcast. And you know how fun the podcast can be. We're gonna conversate over those things. So on tonight, what we're gonna be talking about, I don't know if anybody has heard about the phrase that people are using now called Bible heals. Anybody believe in that phrase? So Bible heals is what we were talking about. Or they're saying, what are Bible heals that you stand on? And so what we're going to talk about is different stories in the Bible. And it was like 2-3 weeks ago, we were in there talking about in Sunday school, and we were talking about the children of Israel. We're talking about Moses. And we're talking about what Moses was going through. And we saw it all joking around, and we were saying, like, I understand what Moses was going through. So we'll get to that, actually, during this month. And so we'll laugh and we'll talk about that. But on tonight, the topic what we're going to talk about on tonight is sons and daughters. Sons and daughters. So we're going to talk about that on tonight. And so we're not talking about necessarily the sons and the daughters. We're going to be talking about kind of the aspect of parenting. And so that different idea of, not a different idea, but that aspect of parenting. And so parenting is so, when you become a parent, or when you become a guardian, or when you become, it could be in forms of like godparenting, it could become of like aunties and uncles, it could be actual parents themselves, it could be step parents, it could be whatever, foster parents, whatever it could be. Whenever you are over the life, you have some authority or you have some responsibility over some individual's life, some individual's life. You start to think and you begin to react and you begin to move in a different manner. And it's crazy how that begins to happen. I always tell a story about when our children were born, and it's like as soon as they got into my arms, it's like I got it. Like no one, like before then, I didn't understand what being a father was going to be all about. I just rushed it. And so I didn't know what like being a father or being a parent was going to be about. But as soon as I looked down at my child, and I looked at my children, and as soon as I looked down at them, I immediately knew exactly what to do. Like it just came upon me. I knew that regardless of what was, I didn't know exactly, how to be the perfect parent, but I knew exactly that at that moment in time, I was going to give everything that I could to be the greatest father that I could possibly be. I always tell a story and I laugh because so we have 4 children. So when Katie was born, we were in the hospital and so now I'm a pro, right? We had Kennedy, we had Aiden, and we had AJ, and so now we had Gal. And so I am a pro at being a parent. And so I am a pro at baby. Before that, I didn't even hold babies. Like before having my own children, I didn't even know how to hold children. I didn't know how to hold babies. I was like, I'm not going to drop this delicate child. I don't know how to hold them in my arms. I don't know how to keep them comfortable. But as soon as they handed me, when I remember they handed me Aiden, I was like, oh, okay, all right, okay. I know how to hold baby. Like immediately, I know how to hold baby. And so we got down to Gal. So we got down to Gal. I was in the hospital. Trish was taking a nap, and we were still in the hospital, and I was holding Katie, and I was holding her in my arms, and Katie was born in September. So you know what's happening in September. She's born September 17th. So we're in the hospital. So what's on TV? Football, right? So football is on TV. And so I'm holding Katie as we just got through going through that whole cycle of having Katie. And so I'm still haven't got that much sleep. We're going through the whole, trying to ovulate process and all that. We're going through that whole, trying to get to centimeters, trying to have a baby and all that stuff. So we're going through that process. So now it's time. But I do want to hold my child. We just had it. So I'm holding the baby. And as I'm holding Katie, I'm sitting in the chair and I begin to fall asleep. And so I end up passing out while I'm in the chair, holding Katie. So I looked at Layton. He just looked at me like, I cannot believe you fell asleep with a newborn child in your hand. So it's funny and so I was like, that look makes sense. But to you, because you're on the outside looking in at me at this newborn child, and I'm sitting in just a regular chair and I'm knocked out. But what everybody didn't see is that for 2 years, so AJ at that moment in time was like a year and like 3 months, something around that mark, right? So what nobody saw is that from the time we brought AJ home, I had been holding a crying baby. He never stopped crying. Gal was going into her first year of life. AJ was still up at night, still irritated, still crying. So I got into the habit of falling asleep while holding AJ, and he's like losing his marbles because I haven't been working. So I got to have I am just good at holding babies now. He's losing it all the time. So when the nurse walks in and she sees and she's you had done that? You said what? It sounded like father. Oh no, that's it. I was a crybaby. I was a crybaby. What's hey, I mean,
take it back.
Oh no! Oh, everybody wants to take me back. I was that back.
You didn't like folks.
Oh my gosh! I didn't. So they're telling me now you get him. They're telling me that I was the exact same way. So I'm getting my revenge. That's what it was. I got my revenge with AJ. I don't think. Y'all didn't know what y'all did. Y'all didn't know how to hold me right. Y'all didn't know. I didn't even know the camera hit. Like, you gotta see their face. They're like,
not take a pacifier.
Oh my gosh, I wouldn't take a pacifier. So,
you gotta take a pacifier. Yeah.
That's amazing. So, AJ was horrible. I love my child. But he drove me nuts that first 2 years. So when the nurse walks in, when I'm holding Katie in my arms, I'm knocked out. And so I'm trying to watch football, but so I'm knocked out. And she comes in the door, and when she comes in the door, she's like, oh my gosh, like you're holding the baby. You're holding the baby so like you're not holding her right. Like yeah, I can't believe you fell asleep. And so and I'm trying not to get irritated because I'm sleepy, and I'm just sitting in the chair. I'm not in my bed, and so I have a newborn, and the baby's asleep just fine. She's not even crying. There's an issue, but she's coming in to try to tell me what I'm supposed to do. And she comes to grab the child, come to grab Katie. And I'm like, you're not. She's like, I'm going to grab the baby so I can show you how to hold her. And so she was trying to explain this to me. And so as she was trying to explain it to me, like in the middle of the process, she was trying. I'm still holding Katie. She's trying to tell me how to do it. And I was like, she's our fourth child. The nurse looked at me, and it's like when she looked at me, she saw all three of the other children. And she saw the stress that they had put on my face. And she turned around and was like, did you want any water? Did you want any juice? Anything? Like immediately she understood that, like, to new parents, you got to break this system down. But to someone that this is their fourth child, you have gone through the woes of life. And now you have figured it out. And so as we talk about sons and daughters, we talk about parenting, when we talk about that, we don't always get it right, right? In our lives, that we don't always get it right. I'm talking to Trisha the other day. She saw a post that said that grandparents, the grandchildren show grandparents how they were supposed to love originally. And so I disagreed with that post. What you got? I thought you wanted to say something.
I'm just checking.
Okay, so when I saw that, when she said that, I disagreed with that post because we're in circumstances and different situations. Our parents came from a different generation and came with different challenges, and so gave us what we were able to, gave us what they could and what they were brought up under and tried to overcome. And so it's the same thing with us: is that we have our challenges, and our children are going to look at some things and experience some things and say, you know what? We are not. We're doing something different. So grandparents are not. Grandchildren are not really showing grandparents how they were originally supposed to love. It's just that once they got to that stage, you know that their level of responsibility is not on them, and so usually they're in a better place, and they've made all their mistakes, right? And so when it gets to their children, when it gets to their grandchildren, all those mistakes have been made. And all that, as I'm combining all this, as I'm saying all this, because the scriptures, I'm not going to read them because they're very familiar passages. I'm not going to read all of them, but I wanted to read excerpts from the story of the prodigal son, which is a parable that Jesus was given to the disciples to explain them the love of God and the love that He has for all of mankind, despite where they are in their current journey and where they are in their particular place and point in time in life, and how Jesus is there to forgive them of the sins. He's there for them to, as a representation of God, to bring them back to bring mankind back to Him. But then also the other story about the woman with the issue of blood. So these are very familiar passages. And what I found fascinating, which made me come to that point in an aspect to talking about the woman, to talk about sons and daughters, is that the woman with the issue of blood, when you read the story about the woman with the issue of blood, why she touched the hem of Jesus' garment. If you haven't read it, please go back. It's in the Bible app, Luke the 8th chapter, the 40th verse, the 56th verse talks about the woman with the issue of blood. And then Luke 15, 11-32 talks about the prodigal son. So those two, as we talk about the woman with the issue of blood, she touched the hem of the garment, which I love about that aspect as I'm going to get back to what I was talking about, is that once she touched the hem of the garment, I was watching and I never paid attention to just the way this was worded until I watched The Chosen. And so I watched that. Did y'all watch the latest one, the movie?
I haven't seen the latest one.
Me neither. I haven't seen it either. I want to see. I was gonna make a joke and be like, I wonder if there's any shocking, what's gonna happen to make the joke. Because somebody interviewed like one of the cast members before and asked him that, and it was like, any shockers in the next season? He was like, you can get it from the Bible. And so, any spoilers? You want to read the Bible? Because you want to. Right, but from that movie, from that show, if you haven't watched it, go watch it. You watch everything else. I'm good truth, and everybody that's watching right now, you watch all the crime, you watch all the sex, you watch all the action shows, all that type of stuff. Go watch The Chosen. It's about your Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Go watch the show. Guilt trip. Have not done it. Find a way to do it. It's really good. But on the show, when we got to that story, and the woman touched him with his garment, and when he began to speak to her, he told her, he said, daughter. And he said that word daughter. And when he said it, I had never read it. And it's in the Bible. And I had never read that aspect. I had never read that word. I think like when you know the story, and you grew up in the story, you kind of rush past certain things. And I rushed past that part, but when I watched the show and I saw it and went back to the Bible and looked at it, I was like, the word daughter is in it. And she responds in the show like, I'm nobody's daughter. But he speaks to her and says, daughter. And he speaks to her in that aspect to bring it down to say, hey, you are someone that I care about. You are someone that I see. You are someone that I am here for. And I want you to understand how special you are. Not just child. It's the difference when you call someone when you say daughter, when you say son. And so that's why we're talking about sons and daughters. We're talking about just that parenting and that overseeing aspect of it all. Because that's what we were, like I said, as Trisha was talking about, when she brought up that, and we have, I love, like Trisha and I, we have those conversations and we can go back and forth and voice our opinion about certain things because it's just good. When I heard it, I understood what the post was saying, but I was still wanted to kind of combat it so that we can look at it from a different angle, which was fun. Which was fun to do and kind of explore. But as we look at those things, we get like I was saying before, we're going to get some things wrong, and we're not going to see certain things, and we're not going to be great at everything that we do. Trisha teases me all the time because we're going through challenges now. I was telling a pop not too long ago that we thought when they were younger, as they grow up, you start desiring them to grow older when they're babies, right? You go through that baby stage for a while, and so you start desiring them to get older. And you want them to get a whole lot older, and so they can start walking for themselves, right? You want to stop changing diapers. You want them to feed themselves. And so once they get to that stage of feeding themselves and they're starting to walk, we always say, now they start walking, and they're walking everywhere. Now you got to watch them, tell them, hey, don't touch the plug, right? Don't run into this. And, hey, be careful around this. I found myself in the old house, what's I call it? In the old house, like every sharp corner of this little ottoman that we had that had like a wood top, had a sharp edge, like it had like a corner edge on it. And like every time the children would come around, I'd be watching TV, but as soon as they come around, like, my stress level would increase because they would come around that thing and they would not walk when they came to it. They would always be sprinting. So all my stress level was high. Now that they're walking, they can get their head on this thing. Once they get past that stage, we're not worried about the head things anymore. Then you start worrying about middle school stuff. So once you start to get middle school stuff, not only you don't understand now, middle school stuff start hitting emotions. And so as you start hitting certain emotions, and so attitudes start to come out. So now we're getting attitudes. Why are we getting attitudes? Why is there angry all the time? And so then you get to another stage where you start getting the responsibilities. Now it's time to wash dishes. It's time to clean up. But the faster they clean up, they get the house dirtier. They clean up fast, but they dirty up faster. Right, we took a whole Saturday to clean up the house, but it only took them a trip back home from school to jump the entire house up. Every pot is used, every cereal bowl is used. They thrown shoes and stuff on the floor, and so we're going through those stages. And I was telling Dad, I said, man, because Kennedy, as Kennedy was getting old, Kennedy now she's graduated college, and one of our friends, Tornay, high school. I'm sorry, graduated high school, and Tornay, that's who it was. Tornay had made it and got chased through high school graduation. And so Kennedy was like, man, that has to feel good for Charnay to now be at that stage to where she's like, she has 2 children that graduated high school. She got to be feeling better. She's done. I was like, she's not even close to being done. She's not even remotely close to being done. She's like, what do you mean? I said, that level of parenting just shifts. Now we have to step into this stage where now it's adulthood. And we're constantly learning. So anybody that's watching us tonight, if you're a parent or you're a guardian, been a guardian, godparent, aunt, uncle, foster, whatever it is, whatever it is, go out there and like raise your hand for that out there. Like, yeah, like you're still going through that growing stage to where you have your children, regardless of the age, you're going through that growing stage. You're still trying to figure some things out. You're still trying to understand some things. You're trying to understand what's the next step. You're trying to understand and try to get your children to that place to where they're going to be successful. If you're in those places, throw a like in there, throw a thumbs up, somebody, throw a, I know that's right. It's a constant battle of each and every day of things that we're going to be facing. We're not always going to get those right, but we always have to continue to push forward and continue to encourage our children and encourage each other that that we're doing the best that we can, and in those places where we're falling short, that we can do better, and we have to make an effort to do better. And the story of the prodigal son is one of those examples of we're going through challenges now, and as the children continue to grow up, we're going through different challenges now. And so what we're going through now, we're going through that confidence stage, right? We're going through that confidence stage and getting to know yourself with all of them, right? We're going to that stage where it's different. And people, we're now trying to figure out who I am in life. What do I want to do? Where am I going to be? What is life putting upon me? What challenges am I facing? How am I going to get through these things? So we're going through those moments. And so for the prodigal son, which is fascinating, the prodigal son, as Jesus was explaining, that we know that the prodigal son, that he went out, that it comes from, if you look at it, it comes off from a pretty well-off family. And he comes off from that family, and he gets to that point where he wants to go out, and live his own life. And that is, and I don't know if anybody, I didn't do that to my parents. I promise you, I say it all the time. I made it easy for my parents. Like simple. Like it was smooth sailing. They woke up every morning and like it was like the birds and Snow White. Just, it was just perfect, right? But then my brother came along. They decided that they had one perfect child, so let's aim for two, right? And then my brother was like, he's too perfect, so I got to be a little different. So, but he's like, what? Throw it out. But so the prodigal son, and so we look at that, and the prodigal son went out to go do whatever what he wanted to do, and we all have that. We have those times, we have those moments where we were that individual ourselves, or we've experienced it through our children. That there's going to be someone that they want to march to their own drum. They want to march to their own beat. They want to do what they want to do. As though you could given them instructions and shown them different ways they want to march to their own beat. That's what the prodigal son did. And he went out and he lived life and he got out there, but he wasn't prepared for it. He wasn't prepared for the challenges of life. You realize that he had never seen, through that story, just in a practical sense, that he had never seen adversity and never figured out how to overcome adversity. Never understood the value of money. I never understood responsibility. He didn't understand any of those things. So in that moment, because he went out and just lived life, and because everything was handed to him, everything was plush, as they say, everything was going his way while he was at home. He figured that's the way the world was going to treat him. The world was going to treat him as look at who I am, and everything is going to be all right because of who I am. And he got out there, and nothing was going the way he wanted to go. But as things went bad, he finally came to his senses and he came back to his father. Again, that story relates back coming back to God and having a relationship with God. But then also he came back to his father, just in a more practical sense, to come back to God because that's where he could find relief. That's what he could find. That's what he knew that he could find victory and he could find hope, and that's what he could find his strength. So it's pretty cool to look as I'm looking at it right now, just in the room. Adrian just walked in the room. And it's kind of cool as I'm talking about that. It's like 3 generations right there. That's dope. I don't think you understand. It's dope. That's 3 generations right there. This is dope. It's always happening. We all live here, but at this moment in time, just looking at them, just like walking by, it's cool to see 3 generations of manual men in this house. You know what I'm saying? I did that. I helped you out. I kept your name going. That's what I do. Talking to you, Pop. That's what I do. I kept your name going. Every time one of my coworkers, he always says, "You're welcome." And Lacey said that too. He said it last week, "You're welcome." So he does those things. And so as he does those, he comes back to his father's house. And when he comes back to his father's house, he's celebrated when he comes back, even though he's lived his life and it's all been all crazy. And it's clear that he doesn't understand responsibility. He doesn't understand the value of money. He doesn't understand adversity. But he comes back home, and when he comes back home, my coworker always talks about this story because he has a younger brother, and he was like, he said, I agree. That's when we come back to that Bible hill. He's like, that's something that I stand on. I would be as upset as that brother. He was like, I'm that brother. I stayed here. I did what I was supposed to do. Now we want to celebrate the knucklehead that came back. And so he was like, because he was a companion, he was like, his brother is a knucklehead and went out there and wanted to do all these different things and not accomplish and, failed and all that, but they want to crawl and come back and cry. And he was like, leave them out there. But that's the difference. That's the thing about the way, that's what's different about parenting. Is that we're not always going to get it right, but we see the goodness in our children. We see the goodness in those that we mentor, those that we take under our wing, regardless of the profession, regardless of our relationship, personal relationship, our professional relationship. We see the goodness in these individuals and hope for the best. And sometimes sometimes it looks we have the feeling that we can look like fools. And that's what the brother looked at the father and looked at him and said, "Hey, you look like this looks like you look like a fool letting him back into this home, letting him back into this place." But that's not the. And he was like, "I want to be. If anybody should be celebrated, it should be the one that's been here with you. Should be the one that's standing here with you, standing beside you. That's the one that's helping you through this circumstance." But like Jesus was explaining, like God is accepting of all those who want to come back to Him, and so the same thing, we should be the same way. That even though we might not get everything right, and we might get blamed for their problems or all those different things, we have to understand that we have to be loving and open up and have open arms and open hearts, and so that they understand that they have a place. There's always a place. There's always a place. Not saying that I'm gonna give you the money. I'm always have to be the one that's going to pick you up. But always understand that you always have a place. You always have that support system. And so, to talk about sons and daughters, I encourage all those who are watching to say, "Hey, you're doing a fantastic job," and that it's a process, right? It's a process. It doesn't that parenting, that overseeing, that never ceases, that never slows down. It's constantly happening in different ages. I was also discussing and talking about the woman with the issue of blood because because her issue was unforeseen. She didn't make the issue. That makes sense. Like she didn't cause her own issue. The prodigal son caused his own issue, but the woman with the issue of blood didn't cause the issue. There was just something that began. There was an illness within her, and as I was explaining to my daughter earlier today, is that there's going to be circumstances that are unforeseen, but what can we do about it? And I love how she could continue to persist and find a way to make herself to Jesus. But then also how Jesus took his time to call her daughter and begin to speak to her, no matter what people begin to think. She was at that moment in time ceremonially unclean, right? She was dirty because she was she was constantly having a menstrual cycle, and so she was at that point she was unclean. And here it is, Jesus is touching her, Jesus is talking to her, Jesus is speaking to her. She had touched Jesus, the hem of his garment. Yet Jesus was speaking to her. I understand that she was like, "You are my daughter. You are who I have come for." He told her that her faith has healed her, but he spoke to her with love and kindness. And so I was telling my daughter earlier today about unforeseen challenges and bringing these things up to her and understanding that she must see things in life. But they're not always going to get those things. Even though we break it down to them, I want to encourage you on that also, that even though I know we've experienced it, throw that down in the chat too. If you have experienced those times and those moments where you've given wisdom and yet they haven't listened to it. Right? You've given wisdom and you kind of showed it the way. That was one of the questions I was going to ask Dude on tonight. I was like, do you ever remember a moment, Pop, do you remember a moment where you saw, or even like you ever saw like your like one of us, like me and Ashton, about to make a mistake? Like you see us about to come across something, you just see it, like the way we're moving, the way we're talking, or the direction that we're going, and then we're about to make a mistake. And you didn't say anything just to let them learn the lesson. I don't know if you remember any scenario. I was going to ask you about that. But I want to ask them, like, has anybody experienced that moment where you've seen your child about to make a mistake, like you've seen someone that you have been a guardian over, or you overseen, like you saw them about to make this mistake, and you kind of like you sat back and you allowed them to learn and to go through that hardship so that they would understand what that situation was going to lead them to. And I asked that question. Um, I want to ask that question because that's a part of that's part of like that process of parenting of that we can't always tell our children what to do because they don't hear it. Become that teacher in the Charlie Brown cartoons. You just wow, 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 wow. That's all they hear because they're like, oh, you're just trying to get wisdom. You're trying to be you try to be wise and all this stuff. You don't want to hear that type of stuff. I remember when my dad gave me the birds and the bees talk, he stuck it me. It was so good. He stuck it. And we was in the middle of the birds and the bees talk now before I realized we were talking about the birds and the bees. And so, and which is so funny. We don't even use that phrase anymore, do we? I don't think the generation use birds and the bees talk.
I don't know.
I don't think. So if anybody's younger and not knowing that's the sex talk.
They probably just say it.
Yeah, they probably just say it's sex talk. You're right. They just go right into it. But yeah, I laughed about it. But I wasn't like thinking about it. Like I wasn't even at that point in my stage in life. I hadn't even thought about sex. But my dad just in the middle of heading to the barbershop, he was talking. And in the middle of that, I realized I was like, "Oh, this man is talking." He's like, "Oh, we're having the talk." I didn't even know we're having the talk. And so as we were having, I don't remember like too much about how the conversation went, but I do remember being shocked that this is the moment. Because on TV, it's like it's all plotted up. It's like, "Hey son, let's sit down and let's talk. Let's talk about the birds and the bees." Anybody know where they come from? The birds and the bees, like the phrase. That's like a Jeopardy thing. You should know that. He's gonna look it up. But do you know?
That was a saying. I don't know when it started.
Yeah.
But they started saying they use that. They use birds and bees instead of saying sex because saying sex was such a taboo.
So taboo at that point in time. Y'all was wondering how they like tied that together.
So that's what they came up with, birds and bees.
Birds and bees. Gotcha. I was wondering. I never asked that question. Never looked at it.
If you look at it, you will see another
No. If you look it up, you'll know the definition of it. But I was having that conversation. I started thinking about when Pop was giving that conversation, it popped in my head just recently as I've been talking to my children, and I started thinking about saying, there's times when I see them about to do something, and you have to just let them do it. Right? You have to let them go through something, and then immediately when it goes wrong, they look back at you, and they're like, you didn't stop me. I can't believe you allowed me to go through this. But sometimes it's a better teacher. And so we learn those lessons as parents, and we learn those lessons as guardians. That sometimes it's going to be that way. We're going to have to, kind of let them fall and let them make mistakes and go through those challenging times. But then there's other times where you try to give as much wisdom as you can, like not touching the stove. I always say that I never understood, which I married my wife is if you tell me the stove is hot, just as like how I know. I gotta touch it. And when she said it all the time, then that's the way she moves. She's like, her parents tell her all the time, "Hey, that stove is hot." She's like, "Don't look hot, but the stove's hot. Don't look hot." They told me it was hot. I saw melting skin, and that was good enough for me. What you got?
My niece told me when she was a teenager, she goes, "Uncle Lathan, I know the water's hot in the boiling pot,
Yeah.
but I have to stick my hand in anyway."
So when they just
maybe don't say that.
So it was explaining about it.
You try to impart wisdom.
Right. You try to impart wisdom, and she was just explaining kind of like a similar situation Then there's somebody that told them the same thing. That you give them wisdom, and they're looking at it, and they're like, I know this is bad, but I got to see what it's all about. And it's like, but sometimes it becomes the greatest teacher. It takes, you feel like as parents, they shouldn't have to go through those moments. I can only imagine how Jesus was trying to explain to his disciples and take them through that process. Because if you go back and look at the Bible, I love it also. Again, go read the chosen. Because you start realizing that the apostles, the disciples, they were just men. Jesus chose just men, not he didn't pick men that were like righteous men, right? He didn't pick men that they weren't out there speaking in synagogues, right? They weren't having prayer meetings. He just picked men because of their capabilities, because of the talents and the things that he saw within them. And so he saw those things, and so he was constantly pushing and continuing to tell them things. And they would fail at something. They would fall short and come up short on some of these things. But yet they would continue to try each and every day to continue to be better and better. But some of them said they have to fail. They have to fail it. They have to struggle it, and Jesus had to come back and teach them some things. And so there's some things that's the same way as parents that we have to get the exact same way. We have to get that same result. But we have to continue to encourage them and talk to them and talk to our children about those moments and say, you don't always have to fall. You don't have to fall in the face. I remember Aaliyah had told John that one time, just let me fail. And I was like, that's so frustrating. No, well, that's a good teacher. And I understood where she was coming from. But as a parent, you're like, I don't want to see you fail. One last question I wanted to ask, I was going to ask Steve about this. As we're talking about sons and daughters, you only had boys, and so I have a bit of both. Lathan has nieces and nephews, and they have I've seen them, especially when they were at that house and around Keisha and Lathan often. And so I was wondering, I was going to ask the question, which do you believe is easier to raise, sons or daughters? What do you think? Sons? Pop said sons. And so, and it makes sense, that you would say sons. As I have two daughters, I find it more difficult to raise daughters. And the reason why I say that, so throw on the channel, so be watching, those who have sons, you have daughters, you raise nieces and nephews, whatever it is. Throw that on the channel. Which one do you believe is easier for you? If you throw like a quick why in there, you can. You're like, okay, because you're just like me or whatever it is for me. So I found boys were, I found that girls, what actually, what more difficult or more easier? What actually, more easier? I actually was more easier or difficult? What actually? Easy. So easy. He said boys. And so I found like girls can be easier for me. Because if you look at girls, because I have girls, I can, my job is to show them what, like if they get into a relationship, what a man is supposed to look like. So it becomes easier because each and every day I just have to love on their mother. Right? So I love on their mother and I communicate with their mother and I support them. I lift them up. I can speak kind words to them and all that type of stuff. So I show them the example of how they're supposed to be treated, how they're supposed to be spoken to, and all those type of things. So I find it a little bit easier. I find it challenging with boys because I want them to understand the aspect of, because it seems like because I am a man, and when we grow up, we're taking building blocks, right? So when I was growing up, my father taught us how to be men, right? So my dad taught us how to be men. So he taught us responsibility and what to do. And so I got to see my father work. I got to see him take care of my mother and love on my mother. I got to see those different things. But what you don't, because it was a different time, what I did not get to see was my father's vulnerability. And so I didn't get to see him in vulnerable states. I didn't get to see him I didn't get to be a part of those times or experience him extremely tight or depressed or frustrated or heavy hearted or all those different things. I didn't get to see those different things. It's not, like I said, it's not a knock or anything like that. It's just that I didn't get to see those things. And so the building blocks that I have I'm coming to a close for this on tonight. Right. Right. I love that. I love that. So the statement that he made, he was like, because I'm a real man. Right? And I love that. Right? I love that. And so that's what I grew up under. And so that's what we grew up in that generation of being a real man. And so that was the sign of a real man. And so as I got older, so I'm getting to my point. My wife walked in. Right? My wife walked in. I'm getting to my point. I'm getting, oh, I know, right? So as I was a person as my father, so I saw those things, and so when I thought, I was like, that's what a real man does. Right? So we take all of our feelings and we take our depression, we take our fear, we take our doubt, and we put it in a glass of water and we take it like an Advil, throw it to the back, and we drink it and we go to sleep. Right? Right. That's how we took it. That's how it was supposed to be. But as I started finding that, because as we got older, I began to realize that my father began to grow from a level from what his father did. So his father could only give him so much, and then the rest he began to have to build from there. So what I saw was from what my father had built from, and so then now I must build from that place. So now as I build up from that place, I must teach my son because my grandfather could look at what my father was doing and be like, well, that's weakness or that's soft. But yet, what I saw was the example of what a man is supposed to be like. And so, from that space and from that aspect, once I built for what my father was doing, I started to realize, I started getting to those places where my children actually seeing me in spaces of vulnerability, in places where they've seen me sad, they've seen me frustrated, they've seen me irritated, they've seen me, they see me go through spouts of doubt and all those type of things. And so as we talk about those moments, and so like I said, it's more challenging because I tell them I have to let them know that these are still aspects of being a man, because because we all have these emotions, we all have these challenges and these times that we go through. But as we go through these things with men, find those avenues where you can talk about those things. And so I found it so encouraging because I'm able to talk to my sons about their vulnerable spots. And they're able to come to me because they've seen those areas and they've seen me open up and allow them to speak, and they've heard me speak about things. Now they're able to come to me and speak on those challenges that they're going through. And so now we can walk through those things. And so it becomes, like I said, it becomes difficult because there's constant building blocks. Because you want to take them through all those vulnerable spots, but then you go back to what my pops said and be like, I still gotta be a man. Right? You still gotta be tough though. You gotta have some backbone. You gotta be able to push through. You can be sad, but we gotta understand how to be sad, but we gotta continue to push forward though. Right? So we have to be able to acknowledge those emotions. That's where I find the challenge. Because I can because when it comes to, I can imagine it's the same way with Tristan and the girls, of showing them that actually, you can still be strong, but yet you can also still be feminine, right? And in those spaces. My honey is strong, but my honey can be feminine. And so we have to go to that. And so that's why I find the challenges, because, like I said, it's more to it, because now we have to start, because you want to see those building blocks. And everybody's watching right now. You want to see those building blocks within your families as they continue to grow. You want their foundation to be your ceiling, right? And so if you continue to grow, the ceiling continues to grow, their foundation continues to grow, and they grow from that space and that aspect. Again, like I said, we talked about the story, just kind of overview of the prodigal son, and also the one with the issue of blood. Jesus called the daughter, and the prodigal son came back. came back to the father. Two very wonderful stories about the love of God for the daughter and the love of God for not only the son but for his children. And so I encourage you all the same way to continue to be encouraged and understand that we are, as his parents, as guardians, as overseers, that we're going to make our mistakes. We're going to face our challenges. But I promise you, our children are going to be better off from those experiences. And they'll thank us later. They don't thank us in words themselves. We'll see it in their actions. We'll see it in their future. We'll see it in their success. We'll see it in their growth. We'll see those processes. But continue to push forward on that. Continue to be the great mother that you are. Continue to be the great father that you are. And that there is no board that says if you do A, B, C, D, and E, then you are a great parent. No, electrician, tell it, and the way I function as a parent, it is totally different from anything else, and I look crazy parent, but it works. Children are acceptable of it, and so it works. So there's no perfect way to do it, but you're doing a wonderful job. And again, pray for the Moors. Dude will be back with us, I believe, on next week. We'll see how things are going, but it should be with us on this week. We'll continue on the podcast of the Word and Conversation. Again, we're talking about Bible heals. We're talking about different stories, things that we stand on. They relate different now that we read these stories. Again, I think we might talk about Moses next week. We had a good time talking about Moses who was the Sunday school. So it's funny. I thought about it. I got to bring that back up and try to see if anybody else agreed with that standpoint we're talking about in regards to Moses and the children of Israel. Love y'all. Be blessed. We're praying for you. As we always say at the end of the Word in Conversation podcast, may the Lord watch between the while we're asking one for another. Good night.